the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption.
This is the reality of the American justice system today. We are witnessing the highest law enforcement officer in the country actively shield powerful predators while publicly exposing the victims of human trafficking. The Department of Justice is no longer an impartial body. It is a political weapon. We are examining the sworn testimony of Attorney General Pam Bondi.
It's expired. The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record the research that Representative Kamlager-Dove and I referenced concerning the threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, which the Department of Justice scrubbed from its website in September.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness, because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer: right or wrong, raping children?
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens?
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States?
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness, who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive, when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter, so let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contained more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "this is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind
belongs-
you,
time
that
belongs
you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to even
from
acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank you. General,
Thank
did you have
you,
anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph, from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan, from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Thank you, General, and thank you for being here. And this has been quite a spectacle to observe today. I think it's sad. I ran for Congress because I thought we had serious problems in this country we wanted to try to fix together, and this performance today, not yours, General, but some of my colleagues, has not shored up my confidence that we are up to the task. You and I served together for 8 years when you were Attorney General of Florida and I in Kansas. You served professionally. I'm glad to be able to serve with you in these new roles, and I'm
During her appearance before the House Judiciary Committee, Attorney General Pam Bondi claimed that her goal was to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission. She stated that she has spent her entire career fighting for victims. That is a lie. Attorney General Bondi testified under oath that the Department of Justice's core mission is to fight violent crime, protect the American people, and defend the rule of law above all else. She claims she came into office with the goal of refocusing the department after years of political weaponization. Bondi explicitly stated that she will continue to fight for victims and that she is deeply sorry for what any victim has been through. Representative Jasmine Crockett directly confronted these claims, stating that Bondi has intentionally done the exact opposite of returning the department to its core mission. The forensic evidence from the congressional oversight hearings completely disproves the Attorney General's claims. Congress passed the bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act, which ordered the Department of Justice to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos regarding Jeffrey Epstein's global sex trafficking ring. The Department of Justice turned over only 3 million documents. The forensic evidence shows exactly how the department handled those files. The Department of Justice redacted the names of powerful abusers, enablers, and co-conspirators. However, the department failed to redact the names of the victims. The Department of Justice published the victims' names, their identities, their emails, their addresses, and their intimate photographs on thousands of pages for the entire world to see. This is a documented fact. Representative Thomas Massey presented an email sent by the victim's lawyers to the Department of Justice. The email was a list of names not to release to the public. The Department of Justice released that exact email in their document production. They redacted the lawyer's name, but they left the survivor's name visible. Furthermore, the Department of Justice withheld critical documents, including an 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Epstein's co-conspirators. When Representative Pramila Jayapal asked the Epstein survivors sitting in the hearing room to raise their hands if they still had not been invited to meet with the Department of Justice, every single survivor raised their hand. The evidence proves the department is protecting perpetrators and exposing victims. The evidence does not prove the contents of the missing 3 million pages because Attorney General Bondi continues to illegally withhold them from the public and Congress. The power and control analysis of each evidence piece reveals a coordinated strategy of institutional intimidation. Attorney General Bondi uses the full weight of federal law enforcement to protect private corporate interests and the executive branch. When Representative Jasmine Crockett criticized billionaire Elon Musk and his corporate practices, Bondi appeared on national television. Bondi demanded that Crockett apologize to Texas and to Tesla shareholders. Bondi warned the Congresswoman to tread carefully, suggesting she could face federal prosecution for her political speech. This demonstrates how the Department of Justice uses its power to chill the speech of elected officials who challenge administration allies. Bondi also exercises absolute control over the Epstein files to protect the President of the United States. President Trump's name appears countless times in the Epstein files, a fact Bondi was forced to admit under oath. Representative Jared Moskowitz noted that Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 Harry Potter books. To maintain control over this damaging narrative, the Department of Justice manipulated the document release. By leaking the names and personal information of the survivors, Bondi's department executed a psychological warfare tactic. This deliberately intimidates survivors and punishes those who came forward. Furthermore, Bondi's department transferred convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security camp in Texas. This facility is known as Club Fed, and Maxwell was granted special privileges including puppy time, private workouts, and secretarial services. This transfer occurred mere days after Maxwell had a private interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. This is the ultimate display of power. The department rewards convicted traffickers who protect the administration while punishing the innocent survivors who seek justice. The strongest defense argument presented by Attorney General Bondi is that her department simply did not have enough time to perfectly execute the redactions. Bondi testified that Congress only gave the Department of Justice 30 days to review and redact millions of pages of documents. She claimed that her team of more than 500 attorneys and reviewers worked painstakingly to comply with the law. Bondi stated that they did their very best in the strict time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. She also argued that her department withheld the remaining 3 million documents strictly because they were duplicative. We dismantle this defense using the law and the forensic sources. The Epstein Files Transparency Act did not provide an exemption for clerical errors or time constraints. The law explicitly mandated the redaction of survivor identities and the exposure of the perpetrators. The Department of Justice used 75 days, not 30 days, to process these files. It is mathematically impossible to claim a low error rate when the department successfully redacted the names of high-profile billionaires like Les Wexner, who was listed as a co-conspirator to child sex trafficking, while simultaneously publishing a document titled Epstein Victim List, containing 31 unredacted names of survivors. This requires deliberate human intervention to protect the abuser and expose the victim. Furthermore, the defense that the withheld 3 million pages are merely duplicative is entirely false. The withheld materials include specific FBI interview summaries detailing a 13-year-old's allegations. They include the Southern District of New York prosecution memo detailing potential indictments. These are unique, highly sensitive prosecutorial documents that the Department of Justice is actively suppressing in direct violation of the congressional transparency mandate. Let us engage in legal education in plain English. The Department of Justice is legally required to enforce federal statutes impartially. When Congress passes a transparency law, it creates a statutory obligation for the executive branch to produce specific records. Redaction is a legal mechanism designed to obscure sensitive information. In cases of human trafficking and sexual abuse, Redaction is used to protect the privacy and safety of the survivors. It is never legally intended to shield uncharged co-conspirators from public scrutiny or political embarrassment. Furthermore, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects political speech and legislative debate. When an attorney general threatens a sitting member of Congress with criminal prosecution for participating in a peaceful protest, it is a severe abuse of prosecutorial discretion. Grand juries are panels of citizens convened to determine if there is probable cause to indict a person for a crime. When multiple grand juries reject indictments brought by the Department of Justice against political figures, as they did with New York Attorney General Tish James and sitting senators, it legally demonstrates that the prosecutors failed to present sufficient evidence of a crime. This constitutes malicious political prosecution. My professional judgment on the responsibility and fitness of Attorney General Pam Bondi is that she is completely unfit to serve as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. Representative Jasmine Crockett stated directly to Bondi that she will go down in history as one of the worst attorneys general. Crockett rightly concluded that Bondi has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, and fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. During the congressional hearing, multiple representatives asked Bondi to simply turn around, look the Epstein survivors in the eye, and apologize for leaking their identities. Bondi stubbornly refused to acknowledge the human being sitting directly behind her. She dismissed the request as mere theatrics. An attorney general who displays such cold indifference and jaded cruelty towards victims of human trafficking lacks the basic moral character required for the office. Furthermore, Bondi's professional staffing decisions are indefensible. The Department of Justice, under her leadership, hired an individual named Jared Wise. A federal grand jury previously indicted Wise for 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Wise was captured on video yelling to kill police officers. After receiving a presidential pardon, Bondi gave him a job at the Department of Justice. Hiring a man who assaulted law enforcement officers to work inside the nation's premier law enforcement agency is a total abdication of professional responsibility. We base this judgment on the expert authority stack of legal professionals who have formally condemned this administration. Nearly 400 alumni of the Stetson University College of Law, which is Pam Bondi's own alma mater, signed a formal letter rebuking her conduct. This group of credentialed experts includes retired judges who stated that Bondi has abandoned the oath of candor and transparency. Inside the Department of Justice, seasoned prosecutors are resigning in protest. Danielle Sassoon, the original pick for acting United States Attorney in Manhattan, resigned rather than follow a corrupt order to quash an indictment against Mayor Eric Adams. Hagan Scotton, a top assistant and 2-time Bronze Star recipient, also resigned, writing that she refused to file a blatantly corrupt motion. Federal judges have excoriated Bondi's lawyers, with Chief Judge Boasberg suggesting the Department of Justice perpetrated a fraud on the court. The institutional accountability for these failures rests entirely on the Department of Justice and the federal courts. The Department of Justice has devolved into a mechanism for political retaliation. The agency deliberately blocked investigations into immigration and customs enforcement agents who fatally shot 2 American citizens, Alex Prey and Renee Good, in Minneapolis. When a special agent tried to investigate Good's case, DOJ officials pressured them to reclassify the investigation, forcing the agent to resign. The institution even launched a criminal investigation into the victim's grieving widow. This is institutional retaliation. The House Oversight Committee has taken institutional action by voting in a bipartisan manner to subpoena Attorney General Bondi. 5 Republicans broke ranks and joined Democrats to demand answers regarding the Epstein files cover-up. The Department of Justice has failed its institutional mandate, forcing Congress to utilize its subpoena power to extract hidden evidence. The procedural consequences of these actions are strict and defined. There is no hope or hype here, only legal procedure. Attorney General Bondi must now legally comply with a congressional subpoena. If the Department of Justice continues to withhold the remaining 3 million pages, including the 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York, Congress will initiate contempt proceedings. The survivors whose personal information was unlawfully published by the Department of Justice have standing to pursue civil litigation through the federal courts for privacy violations. The Department of Justice will face ongoing procedural defeats as federal judges continue to dismiss politically motivated indictments brought by unqualified political appointees. The erosion of the agency's credibility ensures that state and local law enforcement will increasingly refuse to cooperate with federal task forces. The procedural reality is a permanently fractured justice system operating under constant judicial and congressional reprimand.